Hi, Rama. It's week 33, day 1 of our Bible narrative reading plan. Today we are in Daniel chapter 1. Last week we were looking at the prophecy and the ministry of Jeremiah as he was serving during the reign of King Jehoiakim, the son of King Josiah. Josiah being the good king and Jehoiakim being the bad king. Jeremiah was prophesying and working during this time period, but we see here in the book of Daniel chapter 1 that while Jehoiakim is king, destruction that has been promised, the judgment that has been promised, begins to be executed. In the 3rd year of the reign of Jehoiakim, Nebuchadnezzar, king of Babylon, comes to Jerusalem and attacks it. He besieges the city. And then the Lord gives Jehoiakim, king of Judah, into his hand. This is all God's work. God has been promising this judgment, and he begins to carry it out. Verse 2 mentions that they're taken to the land of Shinar. That's another name for Babylon. You see in verse 4, it talks about the Chaldeans. That's another name for the Babylonians. So just getting all that squared away in our head. And we understand that this judgment has been promised for a long time. We understand that this judgment is deserved. Judah deserves what's happening because they've been unfaithful. They've been in a state of apostasy for a long time. And this judgment comes in 3 stages, 3 waves, as we'll see throughout our reading. As it begins here in this first wave, this first Babylonian exile, we see that God allows people to be taken away as punishment, and yet we see that there are faithful people still in the land of Judah. We see a faithful Daniel, and we see Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah. Those are their Hebrew names. We often think of Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah by the names given to them. They're Babylonian names, which is changed to Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. And as we follow these 4 men throughout at least the first half of the book of Daniel, we see how they persevere even when they're living in a pagan land, even when they've been taken away from their home, and they're being educated. The attempt is being made to indoctrinate them into the way of the Babylonians, and we see a helpful way of navigating that. Daniel and Hananiah and Mishael and Azariah, they successfully navigate learning the ways of a foreign culture, but not becoming like that culture, not adopting the sinful things of that culture. So they're educated. They learn all sorts of things. They're very outstanding in their appearance and their learning. They're very remarkable young men, and yet they do not allow themselves to be defiled. As we see as the chapter goes on, they stand strong and they don't want to defile themselves with the king's food. And we see that story there of how God is faithful to them because they are seeking to be faithful to him. And so we're introduced here to these 4 men in the beginning of Daniel chapter 1, and we're going to see what happens to them as the story continues. Here's a summary of today's reading. For more information, go to tunemyheart.org.